In 2019, Bradford-on-Avon Preservation Trust supported the Town Council with a project to tidy up the town, removing litter and roadside vegetation. As chair, I had to respond to a letter from a retired ecological consultant and botanist, Dave Green. This is our film of what happened when we met.
Right, okay, clap. Dave, why did you write to me about the roadside verges?
Well, in Bradford, there had been a policy to clear away a lot of vegetation that was growing on the sides of the roads and certainly on the pavements. I think what people needed to be aware of was that the removal of these, what people were calling weeds, was having a knock-on effect to the wildlife. Is there a necessity to do this, what I would call over-tidying? Certainly, it's always worth leaving some areas for the plants to grow, because the declining insect population in the British Isles needs all the help it can get. Plants like this over on our left, called yellow corydales, and it's a perennial which actually is a very fragile little thing, breaks off really easily, but its seeds will manage to get into the smallest cracks of a wall and it will survive throughout the driest time of the year. It's very, very good for the early bees. Well, this originally, I think, came from the Pyrenees.
Pyrenees?
Yeah, so you have an alpine plant on your wall in Bradford-on-Avon.
In Holy Trinity Church wall.
So this is another wall plant, little non-native species called ivy-lead toadflax. It's quite a big family. Snapdragon would be the nearest family member, I suppose, that you would know. That's a garden plant. This is a creeping plant, and it takes the opportunity. It flowers for a very long time. Extremely good for bees and flies.
So, not only have some of these pretty wild flowers travelled some distances, they provide much needed early food for bees and other insects, which, given the climate crisis, is good for us all.
Along the base of this wall is this plant called evergreen alkanat. Got the most fabulous dark blue flowers on it. It was introduced to England about 1700. It's a member of the borage family, and it actually, like a lot of borages, like comfreys and things, it was often cut right down and laid down as a compost. And then very recently it started expanding quite dramatically, and it's found around, certainly in southern and southwest England, in almost every single village. Come on down this way.
Yeah.
Same wall, completely vegetated all the way along. Have a look at that there.
Ah, that's pretty.
Okay. Dalmatian campanula or bellflower. It comes from Croatia. Been here well over 100 years. It is an excellent pollinator for bees, bumblebees especially. But it's the amount of it as well.
So, Dave, what are we looking at over this wall over there, right across the road there?
Don't even have to go that far. Look at this. Right down by our feet. This is a bittercress. There's the rosette, there's the flowers. Look. That is a forget-me-not. Okay, this is in the curb edge. Okay, now let's move across. Here. This is red dead nettle. Okay, it's a beautiful little thing. It doesn't last long. It grows, what are we talking about? 6 inches high. Next to it, that is a flowering plant. That's a spurge. This is a sow thistle. This is an annual grass. You can actually see the anthers. It's flowering now. It's germinating. You could spray it all out. You could concrete it over. You could repoint between the tiles. There would be no green, but there would also be no diversity. Now they're cutting the trees as well. They're cutting the overhanging stuff as well. So at the moment there's half a dozen people clearing vegetation from the side of quite a narrow alleyway. Now in one context you can see, well, obviously you don't want people being obstructed and footfalls have got to be clear. We all come from different directions, and my argument is that less is more. If you leave it you've got the opportunity for wildlife to occur.
Dave went to great lengths in his investigative botany in some very unlikely places.
We've talked about the vegetation along the urban pavements and edges, but I draw your attention on the right, at one end of Holy Trinity Church in Bradford. This is an area which for maybe a couple of 100 years has been mown regularly. Now all we've done is asked the mowing regime to stop between March and July. And this is the second year that we've had that, and I'm now looking at several hundred primroses flowering. And if you lean over and look down there's a piece of very ugly corrugated iron. So I'm going to do this, and hopefully we're going to see if we've got anything underneath it. And we've got two slow worms. That's a male and a female. Now, if you see the female, the larger of the two, is laying on what would have been a nest made by a bank vole or a small one of the wood mice. Okay, I'm going to drop that down again now. As you can see, it's an absolute wonderful stretch of primroses. These are all self-seeded. The mosses are coming in, this is becoming overgrown slightly, and these will be later composite yellow flowers that will start flowering. So this is called Good Friday grass. The obvious reason is it comes out approximately around Easter. It's one of the associated species, and you see, if you can look right down, it's got very hairy sheaths down here. It's an indicator of good grassland, and this is the sort of species we look for in churchyard. Once it's flowering, it's got bright yellow anthers that come out, and
Very bright, yeah.
And above that, that yellow fork is a stigma, waiting to be pollinated. We are very fortunate to live in a very beautiful place that's got peregrine falcons on the top of our church tower occasionally, and we've got swift populations that if you spray something, that for the next few days it looks okay, it's continued to visited by bees and insects, but when it shrivels away, those bees and insects will die. And if you say, well, we won't have swifts if you killed all the insects, it trickles down, and all of this is a trickle down process right down to a streetscape and a curb edge. And if you spray it, leave it bare, you will have a diminished environment that you live in.
Dave's letter did the trick. It meant that the importance of wild plants became a priority. This was great news for the general well-being of our lovely town. Our footpaths and streets are kept clear of rubbish and old vegetation, and the ban on the use of weed killer in public places means that the wild plants are left to flower more freely.